You are listening to Dodging Divorce Disasters, a podcast where I interview divorce professionals that give you clear guidance, real talk, and smart strategies to help you make better decisions when it matters most. My name is Lori Hawkins. I am a divorce realtor expert and your host. I have the privilege of working with these professionals daily, and there is a wealth of knowledge in each episode. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dodging Divorce Disasters. And I am so excited because I have Tina Huggins with me today. How are you doing, Tina?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Lori.
I am so glad that you are here because not only are you a divorce coach, but you are also a mediator, right?
Yes, I am.
You kind of have double hats. And you are very niche down even more so in divorce in that you deal with a lot of high conflict, but also you kind of concentrate on men. Is that correct also?
That's my focus. I mean, the majority of my clients most of the time are women, but I have a lot of men clients because men just don't have the support that we women do. So I focus my work towards men, yes.
Yeah, I'm hearing that more and more actually from men that are going through a divorce. So that's a good thing. Well, I'm going to let you kind of go through and tell us your company name, where you practice, like where your clients can get a hold of you, and we'll go from there.
Okay, great. So obviously my name is Tina Huggins. I'm a high conflict divorce specialist, and that means that I train in high conflict all the time. And the reason why I focus on men is because my father was almost murdered in one of his relationships, and I had to help him get out of that one after I pulled him out of the hospital the last time. She had run over him with a dually pickup truck. And then my late husband, I ended up helping that attorney do paper investigation, and I could read through everything, and he was tortured. And even though I come from abuse myself with broken bones, separated ribs, and dislocated leg, I realized that men just don't have the type of support that we women do. So that's why I focused my work towards them. My background came in from law enforcement. I'm also a trained martial artist and was teaching self-defense in battered women's shelters. And during that time frame, I would actually go pull women and children out of abusive homes, sometimes putting my physical body between them and the abuser to prevent any additional conflict, to get them all into a safe place. Not just the abused, but we need to get the abuser out of their abusive mind so that they're in a safe mental space. Then
Right.
things can start to calm down. So that's the work that I do.
That is an amazing story. Have you ever thought about writing a book?
I actually have one started before my husband died, and so I've kind of taken it off the stove, but it's sitting there. It's it's ready to get back into it.
I just think it's amazing how each step of your life has led you to this point, you know? I mean, it's just like you were being trained here and then you were being trained here and then you had to go through this and then you went through this with your dad. And I just think it's amazing. I mean, you are definitely qualified for high conflict divorce cases. So that's amazing. Well, I always like to start out with just a little fun fact so that people can see another side of you. You know, that a lot of times people relate to people through these videos because of the fun fact and they kind of bond through that. And yours, I gotta be honest, I kind of chuckled when I saw yours because I was like, okay, there's got to be a story here. You said that I rappelled out of the bottom of a Huey helicopter, but yet you have never been in the military. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how do you get into a situation that you're able to do that?
When it was even more fun is because I was rappelling out of the bottom of that helicopter while sitting next to the senator of the state of Colorado at the time I did that.
It does make it better.
I was high angle rescue coming in from being a registered emergency medical technician. The high angle rescue team officer came to me and asked me if I would want to be on the team. So I had to learn how to rappel out of the bottom of a Huey helicopter because In Colorado, our mountains are really high, and those are the only helicopters that can get in there. And to get to where we needed to go, we'd have to have a helicopter versus none of us were able to jump out of airplanes, right? So the helicopters were how we were to get into these high areas. And so that's why I was rappelling out of the bottom of a Huey helicopter.
Were you not scared to death?
It was fun. And the training that we did, because I had to learn to rappel, so we would come down off the little hill or onto this big rock, right? And so we'd have to stand there with our feet with our rappel line, and then I'd have to jump, turn around, and land either next to or straddling my possible patient at this point. And then I would have to hook them to my line and pull them down. So we had to practice that for rappelling purposes, but that also was to help us rappel out of the bottom of the Huey.
You are a fascinating person. I'm gonna tell you. As I listen to you, did you ever watch that show 24? Kiefer Sutherland, where
I don't know that I have, though.
he was like in the CIA, but he was like worked with the terrorist group. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, you would never admit it to us, but you're like probably infiltrated like with the government. That is amazing. Amazing. Well, it is just like a pleasure. I mean, I have not known you very long. We actually became acquainted through a mutual friend on LinkedIn, and she was like, "You have really got to meet Tina," and I am so glad that connection came about because this is amazing. Okay, well then I can't wait to hear your craziest divorce story. I mean, everything so far has already made my jaw drop. Usually, it's the divorce story. Okay, the whole reason that I do this podcast is to help the listeners to be able to perhaps dodge a divorce disaster because in this field, we all see people make bad decisions or whatever it is. And if they had only done something a little bit differently, if they'd only had knowledge to do this, then it could have their end could have been a lot better. So I want these people listening to this podcast to perhaps be able to avoid the pitfalls that we've seen people go through. So give it to us. Give us your worst divorce story and give us a good tip for the listeners.
So the craziest divorce story is almost the same with everybody that goes through this part. This one specific guy, early on when he was talking about divorce, somebody handed him a divorce coach's business card and said, "You need to talk to this divorce coach." It wasn't my business card. And he's like, "Why would I want to pay for a divorce attorney and a divorce coach?" So he threw the card away. And he just decided that he was going to do this on a prayer and a hope, and walked into the first divorce attorney's office that he could. And he basically said, "I want a divorce," and handed him everything, and didn't understand what divorce was, just thought, you filed for the divorce and you get the divorce and you separate your stuff and you walk away. He had no idea what was ahead of him because he was divorcing a narcissistic person. And actually, this person probably has way more mental issues than even narcissistic thinking. But his divorce process started with just all of these problems, and he would turn in his financials, and then his wife wouldn't turn in the financials, and it would make him mad. So he'd go in, his divorce attorney would drop everything. They'd have a 4-hour conversation almost every time this happened. So it was about once every month and a half or so, or once a month for a while. And he was paying this divorce attorney $5,000 a month. I mean, I know that's cheap in some areas, but this is how it started, $5,000 a month. And so again, nothing would happen. Everything would be status quo. And then they would have a date coming up. Well, she still hadn't turned it into her financials, so they had to postpone. His divorce lasted him 7 years and over $300,000 out of his pocket for his attorney and divorce-related expenses alone. That doesn't count the 7 attorneys that she hired and how much she had to pay them. Because if you've gone through attorneys in a divorce, you realize that each other next attorney is going to cost more than the last attorney because now you have to put a bigger retainer down to get them started. So we have no clue how much she ever spent and the stress levels and everything. So finally, towards the very end of his divorce, he hired me and he's like, I can't get this stuff done. And so through the whole process, I was able to help his attorney understand what was taking place and get his attorney lined out and get his attorney just doing the legal work, not doing any of the emotional work. We were able to drop down to $5,000 a month to less than $1,000 a month after the initial retainer. He and I got things structured on his side. We got him to clean his hands, so to speak, so he was completely compliant with the court orders and court rules. And we were able to force her to turn in all of her paperwork, force her to get the things done that needed to get done. The whole process, prior to me coming into it, there was probably close to $2 million in damage, not to mention the 300,000 that he spent. $2 million in damage because they had all these rentals. She threw out renters, some that were guaranteed renters because that their rent was being paid by the government. She let pipes freeze and electrical problems happen through the house, gutted the rentals and just left the garbage so that she was fine. She didn't pay during these 7 years, right? She didn't pay 1 cent of taxes, would not sign for him to have her on his taxes. So all he could do is married filing separately. And then she kept taking hundreds of thousands of dollars out of their account and hiding it and or giving it away to charities. She took, I don't know, probably close to 100,000, just kind of going back through things and divvied it to the kids that they had. But they couldn't touch the money. The kids couldn't. She did it as a custodial parent. She started this when the kids were younger, and they still couldn't do it as adults. They couldn't touch that. And then she actually took cash out, turned in $20,000, and the bank finally called him. And when we got to looking at things, by the time I was brought in, she had 32 banks that she was literally shuffling money through each bank every day. Just she had nothing better to do but shuffle money through there. And in order to have that found, he would have needed to have a forensic accountant. But by the time I come into play, there was already so many thousands of dollars. So it was like we just set out to get the divorce finalized. We were able to get that done in about 9 months time frame. After these whole 7 years kind of has gone by, we were able to get that finalized and get things done within that 9 months. That's the difference from not having a divorce coach or somebody trained in high conflict and having somebody trained in high conflict. My job is to de-escalate that conflict. And in some cases, we have to walk away from money left on the table. But in the course of walking away from the money that's left on the table, you realize that now you're looking at a scale, and what you left on the table seems to be a lot, but what you're going to pay to get it is going to be way more than what you left on the table. So
Right.
getting the client to see that, getting the client to understand that running into the attorney every time they got emotional was costing them thousands of dollars. Once this client realized all of that, we were able to get things ironed out, get the conflict down to a minimum. We were never, which my clients almost never can, mediate out. And I don't technically mediate with these types of clients. What I do with my mediation background is help them organize and prep for mediation and prep for court, because I understand what the memorandums are. I understand what you want to get lined out. And my job is just with that because it's a restorative mediator. And so I use that with what I'm trained to do. And that's what we were able to do with this client. Take a 7-year divorce, bring it down to 9 months. And then we still had work to do after he was divorced to get everything final.
That is a crazy divorce story. Okay, so much is going through my brain right now. On divorce coaches, I'm divorced, and when I first started doing this, after I got my divorce. I was not even a realtor at the time. And when I went through, I wish I had had a CDRE. But when I got into this little niche of doing only divorce real estate, so many things, professionals were popping up that I didn't even know existed. Which one was a divorce coach? I mean, it's fairly new. I don't know how long actual divorce coaches have been around, but I mean, it's fairly new, right? I
Mhm.
mean, it's not. And when I first heard, just point blank, I thought, another professional trying to take your money, because I was very confused of what your role was. And I think a lot of people feel that way. I think attorneys felt that way. I think so many of them now are like, you need a divorce coach. I know that there are some that insist on their people having divorce coaches because it does make their life easier. I feel like all of us that do things within divorce real estate, there is a lane for us, and that the overall family law community is starting to see that when we all work together and we all do our individual jobs, it not only is what's best for the client, but it really does make their life easier too. Since then, I think a divorce coach is one of the first people that anybody going through a divorce should, because as many I've spoken to so many of you guys, and I've had so many of you on this podcast that I know the difference you make. When I understood, I would get divorce coach and therapist kind of confused. I was like, okay, so many people are wanting to go through therapy. I did not understand that really you start where you are and you move forward. You help them, it's like what you said, if they can, you make the time that your client spends with their attorney much more efficient. Is that a true statement?
Yes, more efficient, more organized, way less emotion. With this client that I was just referring to, because we knew how much he was paying before, and we knew how much, the 9 months of the divorce aspect and then the several months after, I was able to save him $100,000. That included the price that he paid for my work.
Mhm.
$100,000. And had he had that in place to begin with, the divorce wouldn't have lasted 7 years, and that's what
Exactly.
cost so much money for him. It just kept dragging out and dragging out and dragging out, and my clients get so mad that they're the only ones doing something that when they get to that part, it's like I tell them, "Don't you want it done right the first time and you don't want it to be redone? Then why don't you do it? Because if
Right.
you do it, it's done right. If we trust the spouse to do it, they're going to just jack everything up and they're just going to jack up the price of everything."
Right. No, I completely agree. And even when I went through my divorce, which has been less than 10 years ago, but it's been a while back. Um, as soon as we spoke divorce, the first person that I thought I needed was an attorney. But the thing is, divorce coach, and I didn't realize at the time either how many different type of attorneys are out there. And so going to you guys work with all these different attorneys. So when you go to a divorce coach, you actually can help get to the bottom, like, okay, let's hear your situation. Okay, maybe collaborative divorce might be good for you.
Mm.
Okay, you definitely need a litigator that you're going to have to get inside the courtroom to be able to do this. Maybe you can just do mediation. Maybe you can do arbitration. I mean, there are so many different things that you guys can help guide, that you really should be the first professional that people call. I totally agree with that. And like I said, I think that there are more and more family law attorneys that also agree with that.
Yes, family law attorneys, I get a lot of my referrals from them because they're like, "Oh my gosh, I do not want to deal with this person's emotions." So they'll refer them to me. Going back to this divorce story, it was kind of interesting that they had gone to a mediator. The mediator spent 8 hours through mediation, and it was $400 an hour for this mediator. And at the end of that, not one thing was done. They had each brought in 7 banker boxes of paperwork, and not one thing was accomplished during that 8 hours. And then, because the mediator saw there was money involved, volunteered to step up and be an arbitrator. And if they had done their job, it would have been great. But they took her out to lunch like 2 or 3 times, just couldn't get her to complete everything. But they believed that she was right. And through the whole course, this is what the mediator drug my client, not at that time, but drug him through the mud. I got to read the transcripts and drug him through the mud. And he was the one in the right the whole time, where she was just using him. So when I came in, I'm like, we need a receiver in place. We need to get these rental properties rented. We need a receiver in place to do that. A receiver, even the attorney's like, God, I never thought of that. It's like,
Yeah.
these are the things that I'm able to help the attorney with,
Right.
because the attorney gets so bogged down by those emotions, and I just took it off the attorney's
Right.
table.
Well, and that's the thing too. Since doing divorce real estate as my whole practice, I have even more respect for family law attorneys than I ever have. Because, I go in, I only do the sale of the home, and I go in and I do not need to know their story to sell that house. Now, do people want to tell me? Yes. But I am transactional. I am there to do one thing, help either one of them buy, because I have to remain a neutral third party. With that being said, family law attorneys, they are brilliant and they know family law, but they don't know the real estate market. They don't know all of them. Some may, but all of them are not good with numbers or all of that kind of stuff, or have the training or the time to work with every client so meticulously to help them over the little bumps that's going to come in the road. We are there to give them guidance on family law. And
That's it.
there is so much more involved with a divorce than just that one aspect of it. And, I work with Second Saturday. Have you heard of Second Saturday?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Um, and that's one reason I love that so much. And for anybody that doesn't know what that is well, the one that I work with is for women, but it's a women's divorce workshop that has a family law attorney there, a CDRE, a financial planner, a CDFA, and some type of mental therapist, whether it's a therapist, that might be a divorce coach, whatever, that kind of rounds us out. But there is so much great information given there, and part of that is like what you're saying. It really does take a team to get you through a divorce, and I tell people all the time, it is a lot of money. I mean, it is so hard. I do divorce real estate completely different than I did traditional real estate because of all the added expenses. But to hire you as a divorce coach in the long run, just like what your crazy divorce story, is so much cheaper, so
It
much cheaper in the
it
end.
is. And then I've got all of you guys in my back pocket, and people just don't understand that distinction with divorce real estate, divorce financial. It really makes a huge difference. In this divorce story, he was paying a tax accountant $400 an hour to sit there and look at numbers. She wasn't trained to do forensic work. And then her testimony was poo-pooed by the judge. I did get to see that one in the end. It's like
Mm.
$400 an hour. It wouldn't have cost that much to have a CDFA look at everything.
Right, exactly. So the bottom line of your story is what?
The bottom line is, especially like early on when you're thinking about divorce, that's when you need to bring on a divorce coach. And if you contemplating high conflict and you're afraid if you're in a relationship, in a home with this abusive person, I'm the perfect person to come in. Somebody trained in high conflict's perfect because then we help you set a exit plan in place. During that time, I learn about your soon to be ex, and then I know what type of attorney you're going to need. And then after we've got the foundation laid, then we bring in the attorney. Right there's the cheapest, $3,500 of savings right there.
Exactly. And a lot of times it helps you to know who the other spouse's attorney is so
Mhm.
that you can kind of match up, if it, so yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think I got started talking. I don't think I ever allowed you to say your company name or like how you do clients. Sorry, let's get that in there.
Sorry, you had said to say that early on. So, my company is Your Divorce Coach Specialist, and that's my divorcecoachspecialist.com is my website. And I can be contacted either through my email at coachtinalynn@gmail.com. That's CoachTinaLynn or you can actually reach me over text at 719-580-6684. Number again is 719-580-6684.
Now, do you only do certain areas? How
No,
does that
I
work?
actually have clients right now. I'm working in Africa. I've got one in Norway. So as long as we speak English, it doesn't matter what the divorce laws in each state are. I love to learn that. Like I can tell you, England and Colorado's laws very much exactly alike. Just kind of interesting about that. But I don't need to know the divorce law to help.
Okay, good to know. Well, is there anything that we didn't cover that you think the listeners should know or that you want to relay?
I don't think so. Yes, I talk about bringing on the divorce coach. And again, the distinction of divorce, like in divorce realty, most people don't even know that you guys exist out there. And your job and what you are able to do for my clients is huge. And so that divorce distinction is super important when you're dealing with anything divorce related.
Yeah, it really is. And I love the idea, when you said that you were a divorce coach and a mediator, I love the idea that you don't necessarily really do mediation per se, but that you just use it as an extension of knowledge,
Mhm.
um, to help your clients, which is kind of the same. I went through the collaborative training process, that attorneys go through. It doesn't really even change what I do, but it expanded my knowledge so that if I'm working with if I'm selling a house for a couple that's going through a collaborative, I at least know what's going on in their meetings. I may not be sitting in them, but I know the process and I know the things that are being used. So I love that. I love anyone that takes a step further to expand their knowledge for the benefit of their clients. I
Yes.
commend you for that.
Thank you. I use my mediation in different ways, and I have a side aspect where I'm helping to keep families together, and that's where the mediation part, and it's not so much husband and wife as it is families with children that are in trouble. So
Mm,
I work in conflict everywhere.
mm, yeah. Well, I cannot thank you enough. This was absolutely fascinating. I know the people that listen to this are gonna feel the same way, and you would definitely be one that I would put on my list to call if I was in a high conflict, because it does make a difference. It does make a difference for us to have the tools to be able to help in what situation is going on. So, high conflict is a bad situation to be in. Divorce is bad. High conflict divorce is even
Yeah.
worse. So, I can't thank you enough for that. I really appreciate you coming on today, Tina.
Thank you very much, Lori.
Bye. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The information contained herein is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, please seek an attorney.